Gimmick for NES is a cult classic physics-based platformer that's often regarded as a genuine high point in the legendary system's library. But does Gimmick 2 live up to the original's lofty reputation? Here's our review. If you had asked me when I thought my favorite games of 2024 would be a year ago, never in my wildest imagination would I have guessed an honest-to-goodness sequel to Gimmick for NES would be one of them. I seriously can't even believe this game exists in the first place, and that it's genuinely great brings me no small amount of joy. Back when this was announced, the general consensus was apprehension. After all, how do you follow up a game like Gimmick after all these years? That game is basically NES royalty, and in the wrong hands could wind up tarnishing its sterling reputation. Then it came out that the sequel was developed without the express written consent of the original game's creator, and the internet, as it's wont to do, lost its mind with righteous indignation. Gimmick 2 is nothing more than a cheap-looking cash grab. How dare they? Here's the thing, though. Gimmick 2 can't be a cash grab. There's no cash to grab. This is a property that's popularity only exists at best at the fringes of NES enthusiast circles. There's no mainstream success to be had on name recognition alone. Gimmick 2 could only be a labor of love, and that is exactly what this game is. Now, that isn't to say that if you love Gimmick, you're 100% guaranteed to love its sequel, as they are somewhat different games, but it's likely that if you like Gimmick, you like well-designed, creative platformers, and in that case, yeah, you'll probably like Gimmick 2 just fine. The core experience is still basically the same as the original. You play as this adorable little devil thingy named Yumetaro. There's a little girl who's been kidnapped in her sleep or something, and you set out to rescue her. The details of the plot are not important. It's all about the vibes, for lack of a better term. The designers of Gimmick 2 very specifically avoided bogging the game down with any more lore than was absolutely necessary, and there's no dialogue to sift through either. Gimmick 2 gets right down to business, and it's up to the player to use their imagination to fill in the gaps, just like the old days. Similar are the mechanics. Yumetaro still summons and tosses stars that can be ridden as they bounce around or used as projectiles to defeat bad guys. The platforming is as deviously difficult as ever, and in fact even more so, which would be a problem if not for the fact that some of the original game's more archaic elements have been sidestepped entirely. There are no lives anymore. The penalty for death is almost non-existent. You'd think that would remove some of the stakes in terms of the game's overall difficulty, but in my experience it did no such thing. It just freed me up to be more experimental in figuring out how to actually do things. For example, in the original game there were these special items you needed to collect in order to see the real ending. These weren't very difficult to find, but they were extremely difficult to actually get your hands on thanks to some super tricky platforming. Failing at these items was flat out demoralizing, and the feeling of anxiety at finding one was pretty real because these segments were super hard, but so was the rest of the darn game. If you made a mistake or lost a life or worse, got a game over, that's a whole lot of time you sunk down the tubes. Gimmick 2 also requires the collection of special stickers to see the true ending, but with the generous checkpoint system and lack of lives, the challenge just comes from figuring out what to do and then executing it, which let me tell you, at least for me, was no easy task, but it was so much less frustrating than it could have been thanks to the penalty for failure being so minimal. This game respects your time, and I appreciate that. But while the vast majority of the game is very much in line with its predecessor, it's a bit less on action and more on puzzles. Gone are the original game's potions, with life only being refilled at checkpoints and no real options for alternative attacks. But what Gimmick 2 has that the original doesn't, besides borderline way too large stages, is star puzzles. Scattered throughout the game are these star slots that you can shoot your stars into. These activate doors, move platforms, and other environmental elements, but they only work while your star is in them. So if you summon a new star, the effect will reverse. This mechanic led to some fantastically tough puzzles where, for example, you'll toss a star into a slot to make a platform appear, then jump off of that platform and summon a new star in midair to make a different platform appear. It's incredibly clever. As for the visuals, a high point in the original game, I think they're spectacular here. They don't quite reach Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap levels of amazing, but anyone saying it looks like a cheap Flash game from the mid-2000s is nuts. It's well animated, it looks very attractive and colorful, the environments look great, the enemy designs are cute and creative. The music, though, is a true highlight. The original Gimmick soundtrack is absolutely some top-notch stuff. I bought the darn thing on vinyl, that's how much I love that game's music. Gimmick 2's tunes are very different. Where the first game relied a lot on strong melodies, Gimmick 2 is a bit more environmental, if that makes sense. These lovely new compositions are handled by the legendary David Wise of Donkey Kong Country fame, and the resulting soundtrack is just brimming with fun and wonder. Gimmick 2 may not scratch the exact itch every longtime fan of the IP has ever wanted out of a sequel, but for me personally, I think it knocked it out of the park. It took everything I loved about the first game and expanded on it, and I couldn't be happier. You don't need to play the original to understand this game either, and in fact, if you're interested in trying this series out for the first time, I'd say play this one first and then work your way backwards. But however you want to play, both games are available now on just about every major modern platform under the sun. Sorry, Atari VCS. I absolutely recommend this game. Gimmick 2 is available now on Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and PC. The original game is available as Gimmick Special Edition on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked what you saw here today, please follow, comment, like, subscribe, share, and let us know down in the comments what you think of Gimmick 2. Thanks again, on behalf of all of us here at Stone Age Gamer, keep playing games.